Hi guys, welcome to Patrick Pan channel. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to create an admin login system using PHP, PDO, and Ajax. Alright, let's get started. Let's see the demo first before we get into the code. So this is our admin login system. So basically you can just type the username admin user and the password admin1234, and then you can log in to the admin system, and then you can log out. This is actually a simple system that I want to show you how to create using PHP, PDO, and Ajax. Alright, so the first thing that I need you guys to do is go to this website apachefriends.org, and then you can download the SAM. So what is SAM? So basically SAM is a software that provides an easy way to set up a local server for testing and development purposes for PHP applications. So you can download it and install it, and after you have finished the installation, you can open the SAM control panel and then start the Apache and MySQL. Okay, and the next step, let's create our project. So you can go to C drive and go to SAM folder and go to htdocs folder. Inside this folder, right click new folder, and we're gonna call this folder admin dash login. Okay, and next let's open VS Code. So this is our text editor that I recommend you to download and install. Okay, next let's drag the admin login folder into VS Code. Alright, and next let's create index.php file, and next create a folder called admin, and inside this admin folder let's create a config folder. Okay, so the next step, let's go to the extensions icon. So this is where I recommend you guys to install the extension that we are gonna use in this project. So the first extension is Bootstrap 5 quick snippets. Okay, and the second extension is PHP Intelligence. Okay, so just install this extension, and let's go back to our Explorer. So next, in the index.php file, we are gonna use the bs5 dash $sign. So as you guys can see here, we are gonna create a Bootstrap master template. Okay, you can click or hit tab. As you guys can see here, we got the Bootstrap 5 template. So hit save, and then you can go back to the browser and go to localhost / admin dash login, hit enter. As you guys can see here, we got a blank page because we don't have anything yet. So next, let's get rid of the header tag. So we are gonna create a navbar, and we are gonna use the bs5 dash navbar dash default right here. So you can hit tab. As you guys can see here, it will generate the navbar code for us. Okay, and hit save, go back to our browser and refresh. So we got the navbar. Pretty cool, right? Next, let's go to the main tag right here, and I'm gonna add the class to container, and inside this main I'm gonna write some text here. So I'm gonna use the h1 and write hello world. Okay, so hit save, go back to browser, refresh. So we got the hello world display to our web page. So now we just leave it as it is. Okay, and next we are gonna go to the database and create a table. Okay, let's go to the SAM control panel and go to the admin. So click on this button, and so in this project we're gonna create an admin login system, right? So we're gonna create a database to storing a username and password for an admin. So click on the new button and create a database name. So I'm gonna call it admin system. And the collation, I'm gonna use the UTF-8 MB4 general CI and then create. Okay. And next, the table name, I'm gonna call it users. Okay. And the number of columns, so I'm gonna use 3 columns. So the first column is ID, the second column is username, and the third column is password. Okay, so click create. Alright, so let's give a column name. So the first column is ID, type int, length, just leave it. Okay, so let's change the index to primary. Okay, and click go. And check the auto increment here. And next, the second column is username. So the type, I'm gonna change it to varchar. Okay, and length 55. And the last column is password. Type varchar and the length to 55. Alright, so you can click save. Alright, as you guys can see here, we got the users table for storing a username and password for an admin. And next, we're gonna insert the admin data. So you can go to the insert here. And so the ID, just leave it as it is. And username, I'm gonna use admin_user. And for the password, so the password, we have to hash the password, right? So how to hash the password, you can use this tool. So you can go to PHP hash password online, and you go to this website onlinephp.io and click on this link. So you can type the password that you want. So I'm gonna use admin1234. And algorithm, we're gonna use this password default, and cost, we use 10 like this. Okay, so you click on run code. So then, as you guys can see here, the result, we got the hashed password. So we're gonna copy this password and go back to our database and paste it in here. All right, and then click go to insert the data. All right, there we go, we got the admin data here. Go back to users table, as you guys can see here. All right, so next we're gonna create a connection to a database. We're gonna go back to our VS Code and go to config folder and right click and new file. We're gonna create a file called functions.php. So inside this functions.php, we're gonna create a connection to a database. Okay, so we're gonna open the PHP tag. We're gonna create a variable called host and store a local host, because we develop our PHP application on our local computer. Okay, and next, the DB name. So our database name is admin system. And next, the username for database. So in this case, we are using the SAM. So the username will be root and the password will be blank. So just leave it here. And then next, we're gonna use try catch block. So inside the catch, we're gonna accept the PDO exception and the E parameter. And inside this catch block, we're gonna echo if something was wrong or some error occur. We're gonna echo the connection failed message and concatenate it with the E parameter and call the get message method to display the error message. Okay, and next, inside the try block, we're gonna create a PDO instance to connect to the database. So let's create a DSN variable, which is mean data source name. We're gonna store the MySQL host equal to this host variable, and DB name equal to this DB name, and char set, we're gonna set it to UTF-8 MB4. Okay, and next create a con variable and new PDO, and we're gonna pass the argument. So the first argument is DSN, and the second and third is username and password. All right, and next we're gonna set the PDO attributes. So we're gonna take the con variable and call the method set attribute, and the argument that we're gonna pass into the set attribute is PDO attr underscore err mode, and the second is PDO err mode underscore exception. All right, and let's copy this 2 times, and the second is attr default underscore fetch mode, and we're gonna change this to fetch as sock, and the third we're gonna change this to emulate underscore prepares, and change this to false. All right, cool. So the first attribute is enable exceptions on errors, and the second is set default fetch mode to associative array, and the last one is disable emulation of prepared statements. All right, next, if we are connecting to a database successful, we're gonna echo the message connected successfully. All right, and then go back to index.php, and let's go to the top of the file. So we're gonna open the PHP tag and include once. So we're gonna access to admin folder and config folder and the functions.php file. Hit save and go back to our web page. Let's hit refresh. As you guys can see here, so it's display the error message unknown database. So I think I spelled the database name wrong. All right, this is my bad, sorry about that. Let's go to functions.php and make it correct. Okay, and go back, refresh. All right, as you guys can see here, it will display the connected successfully because we are making a connection correct. All right, cool. Let's go back to functions.php and comment this line because we know that we can connect to our database. Okay, so we're gonna comment this code out, hit save and go back, refresh. All right, cool. Now we can connect to our database. So the next step, we're gonna create a login page, and then we're gonna write some logic to log into our system. Let's go back to VS Code, and then inside the admin folder. So actually you can right click on the admin folder and new file. So we're gonna create a login page. So let's create login.php, and you can copy the code from the index.php here. Okay, and then go back to login.php and paste all the code inside this file. All right, and then we're gonna create a login form. So let's scroll down to the main tag here. So remove this h1 and create a form. So I'm gonna give it an ID to login form. Okay, so inside this form I'm gonna create the title. So I'm gonna use h3 and type admin login, and next we're gonna create a div that have the ID result, because when something success or something wrong, I'm gonna display the message here. So we're gonna use the Ajax and jQuery to display or manipulate the DOM here. Okay, and then create an input. So the first input is the username, and give it the ID username and the class empty top 3 and form control. Alright, and the placeholder username. And let's copy this input. So the second input is password and the ID is password and placeholder password. Alright, and the last one is button type submit name login and class mt3, and I'm gonna use the Bootstrap class to styling this button. So we're gonna use btn dash primary and just type the text in the button to login. Okay, so let's hit save and let's go to admin/login.php. Alright, as you guys can see here, so we got our form and input, but at the top of the page, y'all see the warning text. So let's fix this message. Go back to VS Code and go to the top. So you can remove this line. Okay, so hit save and go back, refresh. Alright, cool. And next, I'm gonna make a custom styling for this form because now, as you guys can see here, it's look like a long input, right? So we don't need that. Okay, go back to VS Code and right click on the admin folder, new folder, and create a folder called CSS. And inside this CSS folder, new file called custom.css. And then go back to login.php and below this meta tag. So we're gonna link the CSS file. So we're gonna access to CSS folder and custom.css file. And then inside the custom.css, let's go back. We're gonna access to the ID selector because our form, we give it an ID login form, right? And we're gonna access to the login form ID. And I'm gonna use the max width to make the width of the form to about 330 pixel, and I'm gonna make it at the center of the screen of the page, and then give it a padding top and bottom 2 rem and left right 0. Okay, hit save, go back to web page and refresh. As you guys can see here, we got a nice looking form. Okay, cool. Next, we're gonna use the jQuery and Ajax to send a request to the server. Okay, so first, let's go to jQuery.com and then you click on this button, download jQuery, and right click on this download the uncompressed development version of jQuery and copy link address, and then go to VS Code and go to login.php and scroll down below the footer above the Bootstrap JavaScript libraries. So we're gonna create a script tag and then we're gonna paste the jQuery link inside this. Alright, and scroll down, we're gonna create a script tag and then we're gonna call the jQuery function by using $, and access to document, and we're gonna call the ready method and the callback function. And inside this code, we're gonna access to the login form. So we're gonna use the jQuery function and access to form ID login form. And we're gonna use the event on or method on and listen to the event submit and then the callback function. So in the callback function parameter, we're gonna accept one parameter, which is E or event. When the form being submitted, we're gonna prevent the web page from refreshing by using the prevent default. So we're gonna use the E or event.prevent default to prevent the browser behavior or browser refreshing when we submit the form. Okay, and next we're gonna take the value from the input. We have the username and password. All right, so we're gonna access to this ID. We're gonna create a variable. So let username and use the jQuery function, and then we're gonna access to the username ID and using the val method to take the value from the input and store into the username variable. All right, and the password, we're gonna access to the password ID and access to the value of the password input and store to the variable password. All right, and next we're gonna use the Ajax method to send an Ajax request to the server. Okay, so we're gonna use the $.ajax and we're gonna pass the object here, and inside this object we're gonna give it a property. So the first property, we're gonna use the URL. We're gonna send the request to login_db.php file, and then we're gonna give it a type of the request or method. So we're gonna use the post method or post request, and then the data that we're gonna send to the server. So we're gonna use the data property. We're gonna send to value, right, which is the username and password. So we're gonna store inside the username property, and we take the username here and the password that we're gonna send to, and we take the password here and store to the property like this. Okay, and next we're gonna define the data type that we're gonna send or we're gonna use in our application. So in this case, we're gonna use the data type property and set it to JSON. All right, and then when the request is success, so the server gonna send the response back to our client, and we're gonna accept to use in our client. So we're gonna use the success function and accept one parameter, which is response, and we're gonna check if the response dot status equal to success. So first I'm gonna display the success message when we log in successful, right? We're gonna access to the result ID, which is right there. All right, so access to the result ID, and then we're gonna display the success message or the error message. But first we have to display the success message. We're gonna use the HTML method to manipulate the HTML content to change the HTML content in the result div. So I'm gonna use the p tag and we give it a style color to green because it's success message, right? And then we're gonna use the single quote here and concatenate with response.message. Okay, so this is our success message. And next, if something wrong, so copy this code and we're gonna change the color to red. All right, cool. And the last is the error function. So if something went wrong, we're gonna use the error function, and the function gonna take one parameter, which is a response. So I'm gonna log the response to the console in the web browser, and then we're gonna copy this code and display some error message here, and we're gonna change the message to an error occurred, please try again. All right, so this is our front end or client that we are gonna send the AJAX request or a post request to a server. Okay, so next we're gonna write some logic to our backend or our server. Okay, next let's create a login_db file, which is our server. Okay, so right click on the admin folder and create a login_.php and open the PHP tag. So when the client or front end send the request to the backend or the server, we're gonna take the value from the front end. Okay, so first we have to call the session start function because we are gonna using the session to store the admin ID. Okay, so I'm gonna show you later. And then we gonna include once the config and the functions.php that which is the connection to the database. Okay, and then we're gonna check if the server request method equal to post. So when we send the request type, as you guys can see here, it's post request, right? So we're gonna check to the server here. Okay, so if it's post request, we're gonna get the data from the client. So we're gonna create the username variable and then takes the post data from the input username. So the username is come from here. Okay, and then the second is the password. So we're gonna take the password value and store to the variable here. And then next we're gonna use the prepare statement and write some SQL to find the user. Okay, so create the HTML variable and we're gonna use the con variable, which means the connection variable from the functions.php file here. Okay, so we're gonna call the prepare method and we're gonna use the SQL select star from users where username equal to the username placeholder. So in this case we use the PDO and we prevent the SQL injection, so we're gonna use the placeholder here. Okay, and then we're gonna by param by using the HTML and call the method by param. So we're gonna by param the username and we're gonna use the real value here, the username variable, to by param. Okay, and then the last one is the execute method. So we're gonna execute the SQL command here. All right, and next we're gonna create the user variable and we're gonna use the HTML and call the fetch method to fetch all the data from the database here. So we fetch the ID, username, and password and store inside the user variable. And we're gonna check if the user and the password. So to check the password that match the password in the database, we're gonna use the password underscore verify. And then we're gonna take the password from the input. And then the second argument, we're gonna use the password from the database to check if it matches. Okay, so we're gonna access to the password field and if it matched, so we're gonna create a session called admin ID and then we're gonna store the admin ID to the session admin ID here, and then we're gonna send the response back to our client by using echo and using the JSON underscore encode function. And we're gonna send status to success and the message to login successful. All right, and if something was wrong, we're gonna send the response back to. So we're gonna send the status to error and the message to invalid username or password. All right, so hit save and you can go back to our application and hit refresh one time. Let's test the login system. So we're gonna use admin underscore user as the username and the password admin1234 and click login. All right, as you guys can see here, we are login successful. Okay, so when we log in successful, it will create a session. So we can right click, inspect, and go to the application and go to cookies and localhost. As you guys can see here, we got the PHP sess ID. So this is where the session was created. Okay, so you can click on the clear all cookies because in this case we test our login system. So now we know that we can log into our system. And next we're gonna check the sessions. So if the admin log into the system, then we will navigate to the index page. Okay, so let's click on the clear all cookies. All right, and refresh. Okay, and close. All right, let's go back to login.php file and in the success function. So when admin login, so we're gonna take the admin to index.php page. So we're gonna use the window.location.href and navigate to index.php, and you can comment this code out or get rid of this code now. So I'm gonna comment this out. Okay, and let's create the index.php file. Right click on the admin folder and create index.php. So in the index.php, you can copy the code from login.php, or actually you can go to index.php outside the admin folder and copy the code and go to index.php inside the admin folder and paste it in here, and then go to the top of the file. So we're gonna check the session. So first we need to call the session start function, and then we're gonna include once the config and the functions.php file, and we're gonna check the sessions. So if it don't have the admin ID session, so we're gonna use the exclamation mark, which mean not. So if it not, or it don't have the session admin ID, we're gonna call the header function and redirect or navigate back to the login.php. All right, and there's something wrong. Oh, I forget to close the semicolon here. Okay, it's safe. And then you can go back to the browser. So let's refresh one time. And then if you try to access to the index.php, you can access to the index.php. As you guys can see here, you will go back to the login page because we are check the session here. Okay, but when you log in, so let's try to log in admin underscore user and admin 1234 and click login. As you guys can see here, we can now navigate to index.php. So next, inside this page, I'm gonna display the data of an admin. So you can scroll down to the main, and then you can remove this code and open the PHP tag. So we're gonna store an admin ID to the variable here. So we're gonna create admin ID variable, and we're gonna store a session admin ID here, and then we're gonna fetch the admin data from the database using the admin ID. So we're gonna create HTML variable and use con and call the method prepare and select star from users where ID equal colon admin ID. All right, and then we're gonna by param. So we're gonna take the HTML and call the by param method, and we're gonna buy the admin ID placeholder to admin ID variable. Okay, and we're gonna execute the command by using the execute method. So I spelled it wrong. All right, and create the admin data variable to store the admin data. So we're gonna use the HTML and call the method fetch to fetch all the admin data and store inside the admin data here. And next, let's create the h1 tag and type hello followed by the admin username. So I'm gonna use the PHP tag here and take the admin data variable and access to the username field like this. Okay, so hit save and go back to browser and refresh. As you guys can see here, we got the admin username display on our web page. All right, cool. So the last system that we need to create is the logout system. All right, so as you guys can see now, we don't have a logout button. So let's go back to VS Code and create a new file called logout.php. All right, so in the logout file, open the PHP tag, and we're gonna call the session start, and then we're gonna call a session unset and session destroy, like this. So we're gonna create a logout system, right? And then go back to index.php. So scroll on the top and until you see the form here. So you can change from to div, and then inside this div, let's get rid of this code. And now we're gonna check the session. So open the PHP tag and duplicate this PHP tag 2 times, like this, okay? So we're gonna use if statement to check, and we're gonna cut the curly braces here to here and else, and do the same for this one, like this, okay? And we're gonna check if it set the session, or if it has the session admin ID. We're gonna create a logout button. So I'm gonna remove this href, and I'm gonna give it an ID to logout, and the class btn danger, and give it a name logout, like this, okay? Hit save and go back to browser, refresh. As you guys can see here, we got the logout button. Alright, the next step, we're gonna use the jQuery and send an Ajax request to log out the user, okay? Go back to VS Code and scroll down, and we're gonna create a script tag. So we're gonna use the jQuery. So first thing, before we use the jQuery, don't forget to link the jQuery URL inside this index.php. So I'm gonna go to login.php, and we're gonna copy the jQuery link here and go to index.php and paste it above the Bootstrap JavaScript library here. Alright, and scroll down. So we're gonna use the jQuery document.ready callback function, and inside this code we're gonna access to the logout ID, so which means the ID of this button. Alright, and we're gonna use the on method. So we're gonna listen to the click event, and then the callback function, which take one parameter. So we're gonna prevent default by using e.preventDefault here, and then we're gonna use the Ajax. So we're gonna use the $.Ajax, and we're gonna define the URL property. So we're gonna send the request to logout.php file, and then type, we're gonna set it to post method, and the data type JSON, and then when it's success, we're gonna use the success function. So we're gonna take one parameter, which is the response, and we're gonna check if response.status equal to success. We're gonna use the window.location.href, and then navigate back to login.php file or page. So if something was wrong, we're gonna use the error function, and we're gonna take the one parameter, which is response, and we're gonna console log the response to the browser console, like this, okay? But I forget to create a server response. So actually you can go back to logout.php, and below this, oh, I did something wrong here, so remove this out. Okay, so inside this logout file, I'm gonna echo and send the response back to client using JSON_encode, and then we gonna send the status to success and the message to logged out successfully. Alright, hit save and go back to browser. So refresh one time, and then you can click on the logout button. As you guys can see here, we logged out, and after we logging out, if you try to go to the index.php page, you can go to index.php page. So let's test it one more time. Let's log in to the system admin_user admin 1 2 3 4, login. As you guys can see here, it's working fine. And log out. Alright, cool. Alright, I hope this video is helpful for you guys who want to learn about PHP, PDO, and Ajax. So if this video is helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you guys soon in the next video.